I never imagined that a simple post hole could lead to the collapse of a $4 million estate. But when you're dealing with an HOA Karen with a God complex and too much free time, even the most mundane task can trigger an all-out war. This is the story of how I, just a regular guy trying to install a fence, ended up exposing a tangled web of corruption, lies, and greed that brought down an entire empire. And yes, it all started with a hole in the ground. It was a bright Saturday morning, and I was finally putting up a modest wooden fence around my property. I had my post hole digger, a few bags of concrete, and a YouTube tutorial queued up on my phone. Nothing fancy, nothing over the top. Just a clean border around my backyard to keep my two golden retrievers from wandering into my neighbor's koi pond again. I'd even checked with the local zoning office. No permit required for fences under 6 feet tall. I was well within my rights. What I didn't anticipate was Patricia Holloway, president of our HOA, self-declared architectural integrity enforcer, and the reigning queen of unnecessary drama, marching across my lawn with a notepad, a scowl, and a Bluetooth headset, as if she was commanding troops in a war zone. She didn't even greet me. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" she barked, pointing at the shallow hole I just dug near my property line. "Building a fence," I said calmly, wiping sweat from my forehead. "All within code. It's on my land." She looked at me like I'd told her I was installing a missile silo. "This is a clear violation of Section 8, Paragraph 12 of the HOA Guidelines. You can't alter landscaping without prior approval from the Architectural Committee." I raised an eyebrow. "It's a fence, not a landscape alteration, and your guidelines don't override city regulations." Apparently, logic wasn't welcome in Karen land. She pulled out her phone and started snapping photos of my post hole like it was a crime scene. "I'm reporting this," she said coldly. "Expect a fine and possibly a lien." "Suit yourself," I shrugged and went back to digging. 5 minutes later, 2 police cruisers rolled up in front of my house. 2. I was still holding the post hole digger when one officer cautiously approached me, hand hovering near his belt. "Sir, we received a report of illegal excavation," he said. I couldn't help but laugh. "You're kidding me. She called the cops over a post hole?" They weren't amused, but as they asked for my ID and I calmly explained the situation, it became clear they were starting to see the absurdity of it all. I even pulled up the city ordinance on my phone and showed them the exact clause allowing my fence. One officer turned to Karen and asked, "Ma'am, are you aware this doesn't violate any city laws?" She stiffened. "It violates our community's standards, and that's what matters here." That's when the officer hit her with something that changed everything. "Ma'am, unless there's a criminal offense or violation of municipal code, this is a civil matter. Don't misuse emergency services again." Karen was livid. She started ranting about property values and aesthetic disruption and how I was ruining the neighborhood. But the cops drove off and I thought that would be the end of it. Boy, was I wrong. The next morning, I received a notice taped to my door, a $1,200 fine from the HOA for unauthorized structural modifications. I nearly choked on my coffee. This was harassment, plain and simple. I decided I wasn't going to roll over. Instead, I started digging, but not post holes. I started digging into the HOA itself. You see, I'd lived in that neighborhood for 3 years, and I'd always had a nagging feeling that something was off about how Patricia ran things. She operated the HOA like her personal fiefdom, levying arbitrary fines, blocking permits she didn't like, and enforcing rules selectively. Several neighbors had moved out after run-ins with her. One family even had their pool project delayed over a non-conforming shade of blue. So I went to the county clerk's office and started pulling public records. It took me a few hours, but what I found was jaw-dropping. The HOA had been collecting $450 monthly dues from 78 homes. That's over $35,000 a month. But the actual expenses, landscaping and maintenance, barely $7,000. Where was the rest going? That's when I found the kicker. A company called Holloway Property Services LLC had been awarded nearly every maintenance and landscaping contract for the past 6 years. And who owned it? None other than Patricia Holloway's brother. Another family member ran the legal consulting firm the HOA used to issue fines and threats. It was all a front. She was siphoning money from the HOA into a shell game of nepotism and shady contracting. I compiled every document, every invoice, every financial report I could find. I cross-referenced the contracts and even found duplicated payments for emergency sidewalk cleaning and seasonal bush rotation, whatever that was supposed to mean. The deeper I went, the more fraud I found. It was a racket. Now here's where it gets fun. Instead of going public immediately, I contacted a few of my neighbors. Turns out I wasn't the only one who suspected something was wrong. A retired accountant named Dave had been questioning the HOA's finances for months, but had been stonewalled. An older couple 2 houses down had been fined $800 for putting in a ramp for their wheelchair-bound grandson. Patricia said it clashed with the community aesthetic. With their help, we called a special meeting of the homeowners. Legally, we only needed 20% of homeowners to request one. We got over 50%. At the meeting, Patricia strutted in like she owned the place. She even tried to shut it down, claiming it was unauthorized. But Dave and I had already spoken with a real estate attorney who clarified that as long as quorum was met, we could vote on leadership changes. I stepped up and projected the financial documents on a screen in the clubhouse. I walked everyone through the embezzlement, the fake contracts, the duplicate payments, the nepotism. You could hear a pin drop. People started pulling out their phones, recording everything. And then with a calm voice, I said, "This woman fined me $1,200 for digging a post hole, but what she's done is a felony." Gasps, murmurs, then outrage. A vote was held, right then and there. Patricia and her cronies were unanimously removed from their positions. But it didn't stop there. We reported the findings to the state attorney general's office. An investigation was launched. Within weeks, subpoenas were issued. Bank accounts were frozen. Patricia tried to shift blame, but the paper trail was too strong. The HOA's insurance dropped them. Her brother's company was blacklisted. And that $4 million estate she lived in, yep, the one with the infinity pool and marble driveway, had been collateral for loans tied to the fake contracts. It was seized. She lost everything. The estate was foreclosed, and last I heard, Patricia was facing charges for fraud, conspiracy, and misuse of HOA funds. She went from reigning queen of the cul-de-sac to being investigated for felony theft, all because she couldn't mind her own business over a freaking post hole. Meanwhile, the HOA was restructured. Dave became the new president. We slashed dues in half, canceled unnecessary contracts, and even set up a community vote system for changes. Transparency returned. People were happier. And my fence? It went up without a hitch. The irony still makes me laugh. Patricia tried to bury me over a tiny hole in the ground, but in the end, she dug her own grave and handed me the shovel. Let this be a lesson to every HOA Karen out there. Never underestimate the quiet neighbor with a shovel, a printer, and a stack of public records.